We're back with Tri-State Sports Guys. Time for our top 10 list. This week's top 10 came from Sean from Norwalk. It was a very interesting one. It could be all over the place, Mike. Top 10, we're talking to the Zoo about trades and all these trades. What are the top 10 worst trades in recent sports memory?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you go for it? Why don't you give me a list?
It kind of piggybacks off our worst contracts because some of them are going to kind of overlap a little bit. My number 10, now this is one, the player forced this trade, but for what the team got in return, the draft day trade where the Jazz traded the rights to Dominique Wilkins, and they traded him to Atlanta for John Drew and Freeman Williams. Now, granted, he said he wasn't going to sign with them, so they had to trade him, but if that's the best they could do. So John Drew, he wound up being the only reason anybody knows his name. I mean, he was a decent player, but he had 2 stints in rehab for drugs. He was one of the first guys that in the David Stern, like, we're going to start suspending guys for drugs. And,
multiple offenders.
Multiple offender. This guy, so he was out of basketball 3 years later. And the second guy, Freeman Williams, okay, he only played 18 games for the Jazz. But you know what he might be known for? And I only know this because when I looked up the trade, I wanted to get the details on it. In 1992, he had a role in White Men Can't Jump. He played Duck Johnson, King and the Duck. Awesome. So I had to put him on there. King and the Duck, that's a legend. They were playground legends. So they made my number 10. Number 9, I went with the Red Sox when they were able to get Jason Varitek and Derek Lowe for Heathcliff Slocum.
Heathcliff Slocum. And I think that goes, and a lot of these trades are done, you trade some prospects for some big guy, and we always wonder, is it worth it? And a lot of times the prospects don't work out, but when they do, you look like especially when you're talking about a guy like Heathcliff Slocum. He's not like you're going out and getting a front-of-the-line starter. He's what you call a zero.
Right. Number 8, I had to stay local here. It's the Scott Kazmir for Victor Zambrano. Now, granted, Scott Kazmir hasn't lived up to the hype that he had, but what the problem with me was the Mets spent so much time hyping up Scott Kazmir. He was the second coming of Cy Young, and this guy was going to be unbelievable. Little lefties throwing upper 90s. And then they were, after spending all these years hyping this guy up, they trade him for Victor Zambrano. What was he ever going to become? It's like, well, you know.
And then there were rumors that he got traded because John Franco and Al Leiter didn't like him. Those guys are 80 years old combined at the time. They were on their way out anyway. I don't care who they like.
And they both have come out and said that wasn't the case, whether that's true or not. Number 7, how about A.J. Przinsky for Joe Nathan, Liriano, and Boof Bonser. Now, Boof Bonser is
He pitched for the Mets today, by the way.
Yeah, Boof Bonser is in Mets camp. But, I mean, you get one of the best closers of all time. I mean, Nathan is as reliable as ever. I mean, you know, he missed last year, but just one of the best closers in this generation. And then Francisco Liriano, who everybody knew had that kind of talent. And you gave him up for A.J. Przinsky.
Interesting thing about that trade, Tone, was the Giants the Twins hated A.J. Przinsky.
Yeah.
And they didn't want anyone to know. Because they really
everybody that's ever played with him is hated.
They really were trading him because he was like a clubhouse cancer.
Yeah.
And they just thought they were doing a good thing just because they got rid of him. Little did they know they were also getting studs back.
Well, exactly right. All right, number 6, the Dodgers trade Pedro for Delino DeShields.
I have that one on there.
I mean, Pedro goes down as one of the top 10
7.
pitchers, if not higher, of all time for Delino DeShields. Number 5, the Milwaukee Bucks traded the rights to Dirk Nowitzki for Robert Tractor Trailer. They got another guy back in the deal. I mean, Dirk Nowitzki just goes down as one of the best players in the last 25 years, and you got fat Robert Tractor Trailer.
That was right at that time when everyone said nobody from Europe could play.
Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah, and they make that trade. God bless them. My number 4, I had to stay, and this is a trade I was having before we were around, but Tom Seaver to the Reds for Pat Zachary. Doug Flynn, Steve Henderson, and Dan Norman. Now, if you ask my father, he'll tell you this is the worst trade in all of sports history. I mean, for any Met fan back then, this was just the sign of the end where, you know, the Mets are just giving up here in the late 70s. And, God, I mean, none of those guys wound up panning out. You don't know any Met fan now doesn't know any of those guys.
Yep.
So, Tommy Seaver, that's just brutal. Number 3, I had the Vikings trading 6 players and 8 draft picks for Herschel Walker.
That was my number 3.
And those draft picks turned out, one of them was Emmitt Smith, Darren Woodson. And that basically...
Russell Maryland.
Set up their...
I mean, that set up their dynasty on that trade. I mean, granted, that could have very easily been number 1. But, I mean, you are getting back Herschel Walker, who's one of the best players. But when you give up that much for any one player, that is just ridiculous. And that leads me into number 2, and we mentioned it on our top 10 with worst contracts. The Saints trading their entire draft for Ricky Williams has to be on there. You cannot be an NFL team and just have no picks.
Credit to Master P for that
absolutely.
contract.
I mean, that is just. I mean, how do you trade up your entire draft for one guy? I don't know. And then number one for me, another local thing. I mean, it's got to be number one. Babe Ruth getting traded for cash. I mean,
I didn't even put that on there. Yeah.
But I mean, that's just the worst thing ever. I mean, even then, everybody knew how great this guy was. It wasn't like he was just some prospect. He was already Babe Ruth, and they traded him for cash.
For a
I don't care
Broadway
what
show,
era this is.
to keep a Broadway show going.
To keep a Broadway show going. I don't care what era it is. I mean, that's what made the Yankees the Yankees. You could really say that. Just thanks a lot, Red Sox, for making the Yankees what they are. What did I miss?
Number 10, I had the Babe Ruth trade. Number 9, I had the Kevin Garnett, 7 guys. For basically him to they lost 60 games a year since. Number 8, I have Jeff Bagwell for Larry Anderson for the Red Sox. That was in 1990, I believe. I had the Pedro trade. I had the tractor trailer trade. Number 5, John Smoltz for Doyle Alexander. The Tigers got him to win down the stretch. And to be fair, it was actually a good trade.
Yeah.
Doyle Alexander helped them win, but John Smoltz is an all-time great. Number 4, this is going to hurt Mike a little. Omar Minaya, when he was GM of the Expos, acquired Tony's boy Bartolo Colon for Grady Sizemore, Brandon Phillips, and Cliff Lee.
Yeah.
Three guys who are
perennial all-stars.
who are perennial all-stars for Bartolo Colon, who ironically outweighs all 3 of those guys combined. Number 3, I have the Herschel Walker trade. Number 2, Nolan Ryan and a bunch of guys for Jim Fregosi.
Yep.
Who hit 233 for the Mets. Didn't work out the way the Mets wanted, I'd say, Tone. But, who knows. Number 1, I had to go NBA. 1996, another draft day trade. He didn't want to go. He was drafted by the Charlotte Hornets. Charlotte Hornets trade Kobe Bryant for Vlade Divac.
Vlade Divac, yeah. And that was another one that he refused. He said he'll only play for the Lakers, but yeah. Geez.
What do you got, Tom?
My number 10 was Dirk Nowitzki from the Bucks to the Mavs. Number 9, I had Scottie Pippen, who was originally drafted by the Seattle Supersonics. And
close to your heart.
Yeah,
You're trying to bring them back,
I always got to get one of my teams in there. And that was, I guess what you could say was a finishing piece for the Bulls. I mean, and now Scottie Pippen's 50 greatest players in NBA history. You know how that went. I had Steve Young, number 8, traded from the Bucks to the 49ers. I had problems just like the Kobe one. Kobe got honorable mention here, but John Elway, from to the Broncos refusing, playing for the Colts or whatever. That was just I have a problem with guys refusing to play
like Eli Manning.
Yeah, exactly.
Jerk.
Exactly. My 6 was Pedro Martinez, which I think did you mention that?
Both of us, yeah.
5 had Wayne Gretzky. You guys missed. You guys aren't interested in hockey.
You didn't have hockey talk.
There's no hockey love on the Tri-State Sports guys.
You can give us some NASCAR trade with some guy.
But the interesting thing about Gretzky, he found out he was traded an hour after he won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
He had a game-winning goal, and then an hour later, we're gonna ship you off to LA. See you later. The Mets. I didn't even know this. I mean, I follow baseball somewhat. I didn't even know the Mets had Nolan Ryan. Yeah. I had him at number 4. I swear I had no idea.
Wow.
No clue. I'm looking it up. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. What did I have? Number 3, I had the Herschel Walker trade.
Yep.
Like you said, Mike, that trade basically set up
the dynasty, yeah.
And Buffalo twice in there, so we'll put that in there.
Yeah.
My number 2, Brett Favre. Mm-hmm. That trade was just
for the Falcons.
Yep.
And he was in a doghouse as soon as he got drafted.
His work ethic, they were questioning.
Glanville,
he was drunk enough.
he liked to party,
Yeah.
And what was this? Jerry Glanville, the coach, he just didn't like him off the jump. And my number 1 was Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
Now I have one more. Normally we have the listener who gives the idea give the list. We didn't have time because Sean gave it to us late. Credit to him. I actually have a trade that Sean himself is involved in, which is one of the worst trades in history. Mike knows it very well. Last year, Tony, in our fantasy league, in a keeper league, Sean managed to trade, and we're not even going to name the other owner. We'll just call him Omar Minaya.
Yeah.
He managed to trade Russell Martin, Aubrey Huff, and Rafael Furcal for Joey Votto, who won MVP, and Cliff Lee.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it didn't get vetoed.
It didn't get vetoed because in a related story, Sean is also the commissioner.
He's also the commissioner in this league.
Just kidding.
That's
not why it went through.
That's not right.
But what an unbelievable trade. That's probably what sparked Sean.
He spent the whole year justifying it. No, he got good value.
That's probably what sparked Sean to give us this idea.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Still counting his money. He's winning.
Yeah. Great topic. Keep them coming, guys. Hit us on the message board. You can email us at tristatesportsguys@gmail.com, and we appreciate it. When we come back, we're going to wrap up with a little fantasy baseball with the Tri-State Sports Guys.